quick question. In terms of the architectural intervention, the idea of silhouette, reflection, there's another element that's involved with the silhouette of the viewer coming in and out of frame. How is that envisioned, and how do you think it relates to the film?
Which silhouette, sorry?
The idea, the reflection of the glass and the silhouette of the viewer within the existing space, and if that adds another level of dimension to the viewing experience.
You know, we had to get black and glass. I mean, in order for it to work, for the images to be readable inside a space that wasn't too dark. And I was a bit shocked. I'm not upset, but I was a bit shocked when I saw how much the works reflected in the glass. I mean, of course, I could have worked that out myself if I thought about it. I would definitely say that it's not part of the work. I mean, it's just a fact of the building. I mean, I'm not excited by reflections of my films. I mean, I don't find that. I don't find it a very interesting idea. But I don't feel it's bad. I don't think it's a bad phenomenon, because I think most people understand that you have black and glass, you have reflections, and I think that's just what happens. But I would definitely not claim it for my work. I think it's not the work at all. Nor would I like the reflections on the floor to be considered to be part of the work either. You know, and I wouldn't expect the benches, if they were there, to be part of the work either. I would, you know, if we could, you know, the benches are right here.
Maybe we could steal some of those chairs, but they're very cinematic.
We got a few spare ones today.
Any other questions?
Could you just speak for a moment, compositionally, about when I went and looked, I was talking to Barbara, and she said to me, this isn't an installation. It hasn't been conceived as an installation. It's conceived as an exhibition, you know, and the particular way that you placed those four works. Could you talk about just the composition and how you selected the way that they're laid out, what the logic is to the narrative?
The key work was the fight in order to place, because it's a very frenetic work, so it has a lot of kind of like tension and activity, and it's very hard to, I've discovered, I've installed it a couple of times, it's the only older work in the show, that it's almost impossible to have it near any other work, because when you're looking at one work, if you see the fight out of the corner of your eye, it just kind of pulls you away, it just distracts the viewer. So decided that had to go on the wall that was furthest away from any other work, you know, so that's why the fight ended on the end wall. And then the next thing was to decide where the skating film went, and it seemed to me that had to be furthest away from the fight, and because I knew that those were both larger films, because their scope was, I just felt their physicality was larger. And then the other two films I knew were small. I mean, I just had a sense that they were smaller films, and then I had to find, you know, and I wanted them to be on the same wall, because I wanted them to feel like they were autonomous small works.
But in terms of the narrative of the exhibition itself, in terms of the content, how are you thinking about it?
I mean, there is one title for the four films, right?
The show's called Cold Morning, but it's just the name of the littlest film. I mean, the physically smallest film in them. I mean, I wish it was smaller, but the projector wouldn't go any smaller, so we were sort of stuck with that size. I actually envisaged it to be a little bit smaller. I mean, all the films, I don't see that they have any relationship to each other. I know that they have a kind of relationship in terms of the conception to make them for the pavilion, but I feel that they are autonomous. I feel that they exist by themselves. I feel that they're also all shot differently. Each one has a different material. The fight shot with like sort of a high-end Sony HD camera, which was the first time I ever shot HD, and it's rear projection. And so it has a rear projection HD, and it's shot HD. Cold Morning shot with a kind of lower level HD camera. The TD Center, which is the second film you see, is shot 35mm. And the skating film is shot 35mm in red. So each one has a kind of different material form, and that also dictated a little bit how big and where they should be. because they all have different kinds of levels of legibility. And I see your question more, in a way, begs a kind of answer about content, but I really feel that my only answer is form. That I made all these decisions formally. I had no sense of the content when I made those decisions. I didn't really want the content to decide where the film should go.
Something comes to my mind, and it's a literature comparison. It's almost like a collection of short stories then. I mean, you know how often a collection of short stories is regrouped under the name of one of the short stories in the book, and they're not necessarily related. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, or it could be just a collection of moving pictures too.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously, it's only an analogy.
I mean, the precedent
in the terms of the formal construction, it's a collection of short films, of short movie images, whatever you want to call them. But it's got this kind of same dynamics somehow.
I agree. It could be. I mean, but I do think the precedent. I mean, maybe it's maybe I protest too much, but I do think that the precedent is the picture exhibition. I mean, you could go to any gallery museum in the world and you'd see 4 pictures on contiguous walls, and you'd think nothing of it. You'd think that was normal. You'd think that's the way you show works of art. And I think that I try to do that. I try to take a very simple, traditional, conservative, if you like. I mean, if conservative can have good qualities, which I'm sure it can, I try to take just very straightforward, simple ideas about how works of art should be shown. And I think that the viewer, this is why the benches are so important. You know, I think the viewer is the most important person, obviously, and I think the viewer should be in a position to become like an artist and remake the work. And therefore, you know, the autonomy, the discretion. I mean, I think the problem with a multimedia narrative, which would tie images together in a way, is always, not always, but very problematic, because it actually is so overly enhanced in terms of authorial, you know, the intentionality. You know, what is this? What is the sequence by which you should look at this? You know, is there some kind of overarching drama that ties these works in? I find that, I mean, obviously some artists can deal with that that event very well, you know, but I can't. I can only just make small films of things that I find interesting, and then I have to try and find a way to install them so that they can still be interesting, I hope, you know, and without them being tied in to other films that I've made. I mean, obviously, you know, the films are all different. I think they all have different content. They have, you know, they're just different, and I think it'd be very hard to tie. It would be very hard to see them as belonging to a single volume. I mean,
so warning: this is not a multi-channel installation.
You know, and I think the benches would help. You know.
Thank you.